Hi, Arvind here. I quickly wanted to talk about 7 reasons why your tenders can be non-conforming when you lodge it with council. So let's have a look at them. Number 1 is not submitting tenders on time. Now this may sound very trivial and simple, but it does happen. I have seen it many times, tenders missing the mark, mainly because of the different time zones between different cities here in Australia. So if you are tendering from Brisbane in the daylight savings time, you've got to be mindful of, say, New South Wales and other states which are on different time zones, that you are matching the timelines and actually submitting the tenders in their time zone or the closing date. Number 2 is the tender forms are not signed. You'd be surprised how many times tenders rush through the tenders and they don't actually sign the tender forms. Effectively, if you do not sign the tender forms, then your tender is not really valid. So you do want to make sure that the tender forms are signed. Number 3, there are too many departures. The departures are when a tenderer looks at it and say, as a contractor, if we do get this contract, we will not be performing this role under the same terms and conditions. So they tend to actually alter the terms and conditions that are actually put forward by council in their draft contract. So council, when they put their request for tender out, they would say that we'd like you to do this work under this specification and these terms and condition. And if a tenderer who tenders for that work is looking at it and saying that they're not able to meet those terms and conditions or do not want to be bound by those terms and conditions, then they offer those departures. And if there are too many departures that are put forward to council in their tender submission and the council is unable to accept those, then those tenders can be regarded as non-conforming. And number 4, when there is evidence of collusion. Collusion is when 2 or more tenderers get together and collude over the terms or conditions of the tender or the pricing of the tender, where they can say that we can both bump up the price and either one winning would get a higher margin out of council. So if there is evidence of collusion and if 2 tenders have colluded, either one of their or both of their tenders could be regarded as non-conforming. The next one is evidence of canvassing support. Canvassing support is when the tenderers approach either councillors or council staff to get support from them in order for them to win the tender. So there are times that they may attempt to talk to the councillors and perhaps bribe them or talk to their staff and perhaps ask them for special favors. And if there is any evidence of such a behavior, then the tenders can be regarded as non-conforming. And the next one is tender submission is incomplete. It goes without saying that if your tenders are not complete, then it'll be regarded as non-conforming. If you miss out on minor details, that's fine. That's not such a huge problem for councils to evaluate those tenders, and perhaps they won't be regarded as non-conforming. However, if major retained schedules are missed or incomplete, if you are putting a process, if you're providing a process, a methodology, and the methodology is incomplete and the processes are incomplete, the flow chart is incomplete, then that can be regarded as non-conforming tender. And the last one I want to talk about is the tender has contradictory information. Contradictory information is obviously, as the word suggests, you in one part of your tender you have got one aspect or one part of offer that you're making to council, whereas on another part of the tender you are actually contradicting that information or contradicting the offer that you are making to council. Now this mainly happens when tenderers actually copy and paste from the previous tenders to the tender that they're working on. And this is a very common mistake that I've found when I'm evaluating tenders, and believe me, I have evaluated hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tenders which are very significant, of very significant projects and very large contract value. And I have found that some of these contractors that you would think are supposed to be very competent are not so competent when it comes to it. They would go on and say that we will work with ABC Council and provide this amazing solution when they're actually tendering to XYZ Council. So it is just when you are actually tendering, and it is a good function to have, to be able to copy from your previous work, because you don't have to duplicate certain things, but then you have to make sure that you go in and check those things so that they are not contradicting to what this particular tender is, a request for tender is looking for. So they are the seven items or 7 reasons that tenders get. Let's just recap. Tender is not on time, so make sure the tender is on time. Tender forms are not signed. This is again a common mistake, and a lot of the times tenders are rushed through and people miss the key pages that needs to be signed. There are too many departures. If there are meaningful departures, if the terms that council has offered in their request for tender or proposing in their request for tender are not in line with your company, the way your company works, then perhaps it might be better not to spend the time in tendering, or see how you can work with it, because essentially what council is trying to do is to pass on the risk over to the contractor rather than take it, and for the contractor to pass it back to council, it makes it hard for council to accept it when some other contractor will. Again, evidence of collusion goes without saying. I mean, it is not a good practice. Should not be a practice that any tenderer should engage in. Canvassing of support. If you are tendering with council, while you are tendering for that particular work, keep away from council. Do not be seen to be engaging in any discussion to seek for seek for support from councillors or council staff. And the number 6, tender is incomplete, so make sure the tenders that you are putting the time and effort in is complete. Otherwise it doesn't make sense, because tenders do take hours and hours and hours of work, and only to miss out on the fact that you are not going to complete certain things. So make sure they are complete. And contradictory information, as I mentioned before, a very common mistake by most tenderers who actually tender for work where they have tendered for similar work with other councils, and those sort of things don't look good when you present it to council. So make sure that they're thoroughly checked and there are no information that contradict one another, whether it be as a result of a poor copy and paste job, or as a result of one person doing one section of the tender response and the other person doing another part of the tender response, and both of them are talking about 2 different things. So contradictory information is straight away council will look at it and say, well, I don't know whether they're offering this or that, or whether they're offering it to our council or another council. So there you have it. They are the 7 reasons. Of course, there are many other reasons your tenders could be non-conforming, but if you get those 7 right, you'll go a long way of getting your tenders in front of council to be assessed properly. And again, thank you for watching, and good luck with your tendering.